Muy bienvenidos todos y todas. Muchas gracias a esta reunión que el foco de esta va a ser seguridad y defensa como garantías de estabilidad social e institucional. Security and defense as guarantees for social and institutional stability. Voy a hacer la mayoría de mi discurso en español, pero sí tenemos algunos ponentes que voy a hacer la presentación inicial en inglés y algunas de los discursos van a ser en inglés también. Entonces, solo un poco para aclarar. Ahora, vamos a empezar ahora con el almirante Gianpaolo De Paolo, que será nuestro keynote speaker, el ex ministro de Defensa de Italia y director ejecutivo de OTAN, del Comité Militar de OTAN. También debería mencionar aquí algunos elementos interesantes, que creo que debe ser el único oficial naval que yo conozco que haya sido director de fuerzas submarinas, de superficie y de un carrier group, y aéreos. Entonces, creo que debe ser una de las veces únicas que he visto eso en el pasado. También debo mencionar aquí que es un artista, aparte de eso, traduciendo poesía de Camões a italiano. Verdaderamente un hombre de la Renacencia. Entonces, vamos a tener un discurso hablando un poco del contexto de su experiencia militar. Now, I'm going to do this in English, Ambassador. Ambassador Paolo Dobriansky is a distinguished diplomat, and I'm proud to say a colleague from the Department of State when we worked together, and she excelled both as a practitioner and academic, and that's an unusual balance and a difficult one to achieve, but one that she has done to enormous success across multiple U.S. administrations. She's a former Undersecretary of State for Global Affairs, and is now a senior fellow at Harvard's Future of Diplomacy project. And she will be speaking, trying to provide a geostrategic context for the rest of this discussion, which I think is an important base for what we're going to be discussing here. Pedro Fuentes es el CSO, Chief Scientific Officer, Chief Security Officer, disculpe, Chief Security Officer de WISeKey. Él va a hablar del impacto de nuevas tecnologías, de inteligencia artificial, IoT, blockchain, privacidad y seguridad en el contexto de seguridad ciudadana. Después tenemos a Wendy Jackson Dove, and this I will do in English. She's the President and Chief Drone Officer of Skypix Group. She'll discuss the remarkable growth of the drone ecosystem, as well as the development of the regulatory structure and systems that seek to offer stability in this rapidly growing sector. La verdad, esta parte en español, la verdad es que es increíble. Yo creo que va a compartir unos datos del crecimiento de esta industria, por lo menos en los Estados Unidos, que es algo asustador, como diríamos en buen brasilero, pero es una cosa increíble. Ese crecimiento es una industria que ya tiene 127 mil millones de dólares como industria en los Estados Unidos, $127 billion industry in just 5 years of growth. Alexander Lowe, and I'm quite sure I mispronounced your name, I'm so sorry. You are the president of WJA Europe, and as well as the representative before the UN Commission on Cybercrime, and the founder of Data Warehouse. He will address complex, intertwined issues related to personal privacy in a data-driven world and a range of threats and vulnerabilities associated with artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and related technologies. I believe Vanessa Duman is a speaker who may join us later during the panel, but we are going to close. Vamos a encerrar con Jorge Hernando Pedraza Gutiérrez, secretario general de la Comunidad Andina y ex senador de Colombia del Partido Conservador. Y espero que vean que lo que estamos tratando de hacer es dar un marco, empezar con un marco político, geopolítico, introducir en el centro temas vinculados a tecnología, a nuevas tecnologías y el impacto sobre todos los aspectos de la seguridad ciudadana y encerrando de nuevo con un discurso hablando de cuál es ese contexto político en el cual estamos tratando de proceder. Después tendremos una discusión, una conversa entre los ponentes para un poco desarrollar unos de los temas que estamos platicando esta mañana. Entonces, con eso voy a pasar la palabra al almirante Gianpaolo de Paula. Thank you very much.
Buenos días, señores y señores. Yo voy a hablar en inglés. Entiendo español, castellano, me voy a hablar en inglés. And being European, I will speak from an European perspective on the importance of security and defense. Although I saw Mr. Solana was here, I'm a little bit embarrassed to speak of a European defense and security in face of Xavier Solana, who is such a relevant personality, having been also the first high representative for this matter in Europe, in Europe. But I will start my, Xavier, buenos días. But I will start my intervention by quoting two very relevant personalities. One is Maynard Keynes, everybody know him, and another is Kissinger, everybody know him also as well. And Maynard Keynes, in 1937, which means many, many years ago, he says something which is very relevant today. He said, and I'm quoting, "The idea that the future will be different from the past, from the present, is so repelling for our conventional way of thinking and for our behavior that at least a vast majority of us, if not all, pose a great resistance to act in the direction of change. The difficulty is not much in embracing new idea, but rather in abandoning the old one. Otherwise, the new will bring back to the parting station." I think this statement I said in 1947 is very relevant today to the security environment, which is changing so rapidly that we don't even imagine how fast it's changing. If I should address the topic or the issue, the factor which really define the changes in the security environment, probably I would speak for hours, so I will not do that. But I think it is important to set the stage of this security scenario by naming some of the factors, just naming them, running quickly through them so that you can understand what I'm talking about here. And there are not as much as necessarily military factors which are really shaping the security environment, but more fundamental one. First and foremost, the globalization with all the bad and the good that is coming with it. But the IT technology, the IT revolution, the technology revolution of IT, the new disruptive technology coming in, and I refer here to artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnologies. They are really depicting a new scenario which is, for common people as I am, sometimes unbelievable. Another important factor is much greater individual empowerment. Today, the people have the power to shape, to change the future that they had not in the past. So they are much more self-confident they can make a change. The distribution of the power. The power in the past was much more focused, concentrated, now is much more distributed, not only among the one who ran the government, but also among the civil society, among the non-governmental organization, and they can make change. Demography and demographic distribution, that is one of the probably most impressive factor of instability that we will have to face. There are huge demographic trends coming on, and we are just starting now to realize that. Climate change, very easy topic, but climate change will be probably one of the most disturbing factor of our overall security environment in the future. And that we like it or not, being European, being Westerner, the balance of power which is shifting away from the West, from the Europe-Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific. That is already ongoing now. This is clear, evident. It's happening and will continue to be that. But also other factors like the weakening of a collective institution. For many of you who believe in multinational institutions, well, if you look at some of them, they are really, all of them are showing sign of weakness. I'm referring to the United Nations for sure, but as Europeans, certainly European Union is living a very difficult moment, and also the North Atlantic Alliance as well. So there's a weakening of this. And a new factor, which is very relevant worldwide, the struggle for identity. The identity which is upholding many of the sovereignist movement in the world, which is try to find its place in what so far has been open, liberal, liquid societies, multicultural. And now there is this struggle, and that's what we see not only in Europe, but in Brazil, for example, or many other places in Africa, in Eastern Europe. We see in the United States, for sure, the sovereignist movement, which is a search for identity, a search for identity. And finally, just to make, to quote another tremendous factor of instability is what Joseph Stiglitz, which is the Nobel Prize, defined as the great divide of inequality between the have and the have-not. This is a tremendous factor of instability. Well, if you look all this, and then now I quoted Keynes, now I want to make the second quotation. I was referring to Kissinger. Kissinger said, never in human history an economic entity has exercised influence in the world without having a meaningful military dimension. So if we put together Kissinger and Keynes together, it's clear to me that the European Union, the Union, which it certainly has a huge economic, trade, cultural, value-based entity, cannot hope to have an influence in the world, as probably I think a rightful would like to have, in conjunction with other centers of power like China, like India, like Russia, like, well, I think like Brazil and so forth, cannot really think of having such an influence, a rightful influence, without having an equivalent proportionate security and defense dimension. It is impossible. And history tells us that. Because I know that many used to say, oh, yes, but Europe is strong because of soft power. But soft power is not enough, is not upheld by hard power. Soft power to exercise its influence cannot do without being sustained, upheld by hard power. The United States has become #1 nation in the world by its soft power, certainly, its influence on culture, on way of living, and so its value, but that was upheld by very strong military power. So, and the same is coming on with China, the same is for Russia, and although we could discuss about the value of Russia, but it certainly is upheld by military means. And by the way, another very quick quotation. This was by Robert Schuman. Robert Schuman is one of the grandfather, the founding father of Europe. And he said, world peace cannot be safeguarded without the making of creative effort proportionate to the danger which threatens it. So, which is in another way, you could, for the European, the one who speaks Latin can recall the motto, the Latin motto, si vis pacem para bellum. Fundamentally is this. So if the Europeans want to exercise their influence, they have to have a security dimension. And I'm not discussing what kind of political form Europe will take. This is not relevant, I think. Will be the European that will decide. Maybe in the next election in May, they will hopefully provide a sense of direction where the European Union want to go. I think it is very important. But independently from if you, as an European, support a stronger European political unity, or if you are a believer in a strong Europe of a nation instead of a European, a more federative European Union, independently from that, whatever political form European Union process would take, they need to be beheld by security dimension. And there was a recent research made among European citizens about what are their concerns. And for the first time, quite unusually, came forward that security was one of them. Normally is economy. Economic is the main concern, always. But for the first time, the security issue came as a main concern for the European people. Why that? Not only because of the terroristic action in our capital, Certainly Madrid is one of those, or Barcelona and other places. But also because when you switch on television, you open a newspaper, whatever, you immediately realize, what do you realize? What is around us? We are in Madrid. If you look around us, what we see? Very unstable Africa, very, very unstable Middle East, very, very, the migration issue pressing at the door of Europe, the issue of a very, sometimes aggressive Russia, which concerns very much our Eastern European friend, and a rising China, which is, at least for the time being, in the southeastern China seas, is really challenging the international order, the law of the seas, even by force. So we see all that, and therefore people see all that, and they realize security is no longer a given. The century of peace, or of eternal peace, will not continue if it's not upheld by a defense dimension. And for the first time in Europe, the defense and security dimension has become an important issue. Security and defense has never been a main topic in European Union. For those who are practical, who know about European Union, that was certainly a marginal dimension, never really within the boundary, the perimeter of European Union. Now it's become an issue. Why? Exactly for the reason we said before, because now the Europeans realize that they have really to take seriously the defense capacity. They cannot give them for granted. And therefore, the defense issue is becoming an important topic on the way to building a stronger union. And here, anytime we start of security and defense in Europe, there is always many people who say, why we need it? Why are we European and we need defense? We have NATO, we have the American, why we don't need this? The matter of fact is that that if we want to uphold our value, we need to have a strong defense, and we need that. And the issue is how to make it and how to make it right. I don't know if any of you has been to Munich conference. Munich conference was last weekend. Munich conference is the classical conference at the beginning of the year when the European and the American confront the security agenda for the year to come. And this time, the American delegation was headed by the Vice President, Pence. And for the first time, I was not there, but I had a report from people who was there. I said for the first time, there was quite a strong friction between the American perspective and the European, in particular the German perspective. That was quite evident. There was not an atmosphere anymore of let's embrace all together. There was friction, which is normal among allies, but in this case, very strong, this friction. And so therefore, there is a sense that if we want to retain it, to revive the transatlantic bond, well, that is more important than ever the Europeans do their part. We are not doing this. I know that many probably in this audience will not like what's going on in the United States leadership today, but it's not the point. Because even if President Trump is addressing the European default in defense in a very strong, sometimes rude terminology, but apart from rudeness, is not less true. He is right. He is absolutely right. We are not doing our part of the share of the bond, and so we have to. And what is important here? First of all, the political leader of Europe need to push the issue among the people, because you have to convince your citizens that investing in defense is not investing in something that is not needed. It's investing in something which upholds their security. And that's the first point. So political will really to move in this direction. The second dimension, which is very important, is how to harmonize our foreign policies, because let's face it, you cannot have a serious defense if you don't have a more cohesive foreign policy, because in the end, defense is just a tool of foreign policy. And therefore, you need to have a more cohesive, and that is a very difficult issue. But if it was easy, we would have solved already. That's why we cannot be shy on that. The third issue is really having a more common understanding among European nations about the use of force. Because also here, let's face it, in Spain or in Italy or in Germany, there is a more prudent, let's say, concept of use of the force vis-a-vis UK or France. And so we have to come together, because let's face it, there are situations in which, yes, we want peace, yes, we want soft power, yes, but there are situations in which the use of force is legitimate, necessary, just to bring peace or to uphold peace or to reconstruct peace. And therefore, ethicity of use of force, legitimacy, that are the key issues that Europeans should converge. The third issue is the industrial dimension. There is no way Europe can build a significant defense pillar without a serious industrial base. Today, too many countries in Europe are very protectionist concerning defense base very much, and this is, cannot continue, because protectionists will not allow to really to build together the capacity that we have distributed in Europe, but today they are too distributed, too little, too quick, too weak. So we need to come together. Because, and that is the important point, we are entering in a new era of security, in a new era which is no longer the security of the Cold War or the after Cold War we have been used. We are entering what some academicians define a hyper-warfare dimension in which the entrance of cyber artificial intelligence in the security scenario is changing dramatically the way operation will be conducted, the way security will ensure. Because the time, the speed, is time? Yes. Okay, I'm finished. So the speed the speed in which military operations, security operations will be conducted will be tremendously higher than we believe. So therefore, but when we enter in this kind of world of hyper warfare, where cyber and artificial intelligence are key technology, we have to do big investment. Big investment need big money. A big money need for the Europeans to come together. Otherwise, we will never be able to even to compete not only with the US, but with China, which make huge investment, and with Russia, this dimension. So that's a key point, which I think are essential for European. And last but not least, do not make the mistake to believe that this can become cheap. We have to invest in that. So those who say, let's spend better, so we spend less, this is a false statement. We need to spend better, yes, but to spend more as well. And to retain the bond with the United States. Thinking of European security without the link with the US would be a fake news, really fake news. It would lead to disaster. So with that, I conclude my intervention. I thank you very much for listening.
I wanted to introduce very quickly. We have another speaker has joined us, Vanessa Newman. We're going to... but she's the author of Blood Profits, un libro que está enfocado en los esfuerzos para contrarrestar ventas ilícitas de productos ilícitos. She is also, ha trabajado también en el desarmamento en Colombia de los paramilitares. Entonces, como platicamos al inicio, va a hablar un poco de la dimensión de seguridad, de hard power, la referencia que hizo. Y disculpe, almirante, por el ataque cibernético de mi teléfono. That was unintentional. But with that, Ambassador Dobriansky, thank you very much and welcome.
Buen dia. I will deliver my remarks in English, and in the 8 minutes that were given, I want to address 2 questions, simply 2 questions. The first one, because our panel is entitled Security and Defense as Guarantees for Social and Institutional Stability. The first question I want to look at is describing what is the geopolitical landscape. And after saying a few words about that, to then look at what are the implications for our security and defense policies that you have to consider. So what is the geopolitical landscape? First, I would define it as being a very complex global security environment in which we are confronted with a very broad range of challenges. Secondly, I would say that the landscape is also characterized by what the United States strategic strategy put forward. It's characterized by strategic competition. Competition by revanchist powers, Russia and China, as the Admiral mentioned in his remarks, basically seeking to expand, influence their own sphere of influence. Thirdly, when one looks at the direction of Russia and China, one must also look at the questions that abound concerning and the challenge to the international order. Here, it's a rules-based order. This is a world law Congress. Here is the challenge to alliances, to institutions, to the values that have preserved peace, stability, and security post-World War II. Fourthly, at the same time, the nature of warfare. When you look at the very hardcore security issue, warfare, I would say that it has changed substantially. The traditional, or to use the term conventional, still remains, but it's gone beyond it. For example, there's now hybrid warfare, as we witnessed, used by Russia in the illegal annexation of Crimea, and also in its aggression into eastern Ukraine. There's cyber warfare, digital warfare, information or disinformation, disinformatia warfare, as we also know, has been a very key issue. And also, it's significant, it's not purely military. Admiral Mullen, when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had said very specifically that economics matters to warfare. If you do not have a strong economy, you do not have a strong national security. It's interwoven. And many will say, and our own national security strategy says, economic security is the foundation of national security. Here, one of the challenges that we have been confronted in the United States and Europe and globally, for example, China has seized and violated intellectual property rights and has executed predatory trade and investment practices, which is a challenge in this economic zone. Then there's also, which you'll hear, I'm sure in detail from Pedro, the use of emerging advanced technologies, which complicates the arena significantly in terms of security. It's also worth noting in the changed geopolitical environment that it's not just about nation states. In fact, it used to be decades ago, nation state to nation state, when you discuss defense and national security issues. We have transnational criminal organizations deeply engaged in international crime and corruption, cyber hackers, terrorists, many transnational actions that take place that complicate security and defense, not only for an individual country, but regionally, no less internationally. And the security parameters have grown, not only here in terms of security parameters or partners, alliances. We have the traditional, like NATO, but there are also partnerships that are formed and forged with others, multilateral organizations, with NGOs, with corporations. Also, the domain has really expanded when you think about it. It's not just only about a landmass, about the issue of waters and international waters and airspace. It's also virtual, and it's also about outer space when we're looking at this meaning of defense and security. And finally, in terms of my tried to be succinct description of a complex environment, there's also the issue of nuclear weapons, and still the possession of nuclear weapons and the proliferation of nuclear weapons, particularly in the hands of not only nation states, but as you know, looking at individuals, terrorists, organizations. So, to go to the second question, what does this mean? What are the implications for our security and defense policy and posture? First, I would say very succinctly, and one of the questions posed for this panel is, has the definition changed? Yes, absolutely. It is much expanded. It is much more complex, and it's not an easy one. Secondly, I would say that looking at it strictly from a military standpoint, military readiness is absolutely essential in the traditional and conventional context. It still matters. Also, alliances matter. But here the definition has expanded. It's not just about the traditional formal alliances like NATO. I think in Asia, the Japanese had proposed to counter Chinese action in the South China Seas, and even before that, their modernization, military modernization, the Japanese proposed the formation of what's called the Quadrilateral Forum. The Quadrilateral is comprised of Japan, India, United States, and Australia, and they conduct military exercises. So coalitions, informal alliances have become part of this equation. We are in the World Law Congress, and I want to emphasize that also international law, rules, parameters matter in this discussion of defense and security. I also will add that I think greater innovation, performance, and affordability. The Admiral mentioned expense, but I will also stick in affordability has to be part of this equation. When you think about how to be the most effective, have results, but also to look at it through, hopefully, an affordable prism. Interestingly enough, there are also still some very traditional military requests. The Poles requested a forward deployment on their, literally in their territory, in the country of Poland. Why? Because they're concerned about another aggression emanating from the east in this case. Specifically, they want to be able to have some form of deterrence. I mention that because one has to think, how do you best deter conflict from taking place? Also, there is the importance of preparedness and a culture of preparedness. Here, with a cyber attack, Estonia was attacked also by Moscow, so was Ukraine. The United States, for its preparedness, looks at cyber not only nationally, but at the state level, local level for security and defense matters. And interestingly enough, for us and for you, it matters in terms of utilities. What's the impact on utilities? What's the impact on energy supplies, et cetera, et cetera? So then just a few more and I close. There's also the importance of information sharing. For particularly crime and corruption and the various kinds of criminal networks, it's essential. Corruption destabilizes any society, any community. And if you don't have the ability to deter that, to counter that up front, then your society will be brought under. In this sense, information sharing is absolutely essential. And finally, I would say, to last, interestingly enough, it's not just about governments. I think many of the panelists also represent business. I find that on issues like cyber attack, I used to be with a company, and that company wanted to be able to prepare itself as a company, as a business, for any kind of attack that could take place, whether it's in the United States or even abroad. I close with the policy that we've had for decades has been preserve peace through strength. I think it is still relevant decades ago as it is relevant today. But I want to add something I saw for this Congress. It also was preserve peace through law. And I also think that's a very added and important component to this discussion. Thank you.
Pedro Fuentes will now join us. Gracias, Pedro.
Hola a todos. Bueno, yo lo haré en español para hacer un poquito más sencillo, sobre todo para mí. lo que quería era compartir unas reflexiones de cómo la tecnología está haciendo nuestra vida más complicada en algunos sentidos y sobre todo en lo que se refiere a lo relacionado con la seguridad y la defensa. Como curiosidades, podríamos pensar en quién de ustedes tiene una de estas aspiradoras automáticas en casa, ¿no? Una Rumba. Pues los modelos más evolucionados de la Rumba, por ejemplo, registran un mapa de la casa y ese mapa lo comparten con el fabricante. ¿Qué se hace con esos datos? No lo sabemos. Tenemos aquí una pantalla Samsung. Es conocido que los modelos Smart TV de Samsung han tenido agujeros de seguridad que han sido explotados por la CIA, de tal forma que permiten activar el micrófono de la televisión y escuchar lo que está sucediendo en un hogar. Si subimos ya del entorno de consumidor hacia un entorno de empresa, podríamos pensar en problemas que han habido concretos, como por ejemplo un fabricante muy conocido de servidores, bueno, esto se puede encontrar por Google, ¿no? Supermicro, que es proveedor de las empresas que dan servicios en la nube, como Apple, Amazon, etcétera, y de repente se encontró que en estos servidores había un pequeñito chip que nadie sabía qué era, pero que resulta que había sido introducido en las cadenas de producción en China y que permitían que atacantes externos pudiesen acceder a estos servidores. Otro caso reciente, por ejemplo, el fabricante Huawei, que se ha detectado caballos de Troya en sus infraestructuras de red de comunicaciones móviles. Es decir, es posible, y esto está explotado por el gobierno chino, acceder a infraestructuras de comunicaciones de un país gracias a estos caballos de Troya. Lo que quiero decir con esto es que nuestra vida es mucho más complicada y es necesario poner medios para que de una forma, digamos, efectiva no pongamos en peligro infraestructuras críticas. Está claro que si nos vamos de estas curiosidades de la aspiradora que tenemos en casa y lo extrapolamos hacia los sistemas informáticos de una central nuclear o de una compañía eléctrica, evidentemente estamos hablando de algo que tiene un impacto en la seguridad nacional. ¿Cómo podemos mejorar esta situación? Estamos en el Congreso Mundial de la Ley, por lo tanto, si nos centramos en qué puede hacer un regulador, qué puede hacer un gobierno para mejorar esta situación, yo pienso que hay distintos paquetes de acciones que podemos hacer, ¿no?, relacionados con la defensa. En primer lugar, yo pienso que es muy importante realizar acciones de tipo defensa preventiva, es decir, y la mejor prevención es lo que se llama el awareness, es decir, la formación, es sensibilizar a la sociedad en general, pero sobre todo a las empresas que tienen un impacto en estas infraestructuras críticas, en la criticidad de aplicar buenas prácticas y políticas de seguridad. Por otro lado, hay un paquete muy importante de acciones de defensa que podríamos llamar correctivas. Nosotros, por ejemplo, de vez en cuando escuchamos que el Banco de España ha realizado pruebas de estrés sobre los bancos o que esto se ha hecho a nivel europeo. Pienso que sería necesario que estas pruebas de estrés, estas auditorías independientes, se le basen también al mundo de la ciberseguridad. Es decir, una compañía eléctrica, hoy por hoy, no existe una regulación concreta que le fuerce a aplicar una serie de prácticas y tampoco una regulación que fuerce a que haya un auditor independiente que valide que esa empresa que está controlando una infraestructura crítica y que tiene un impacto en la seguridad nacional, que realmente esté haciendo bien su trabajo. Con una auditoría independiente, por ejemplo, es como se detectaron estos pequeños chips en los servidores de supermicro que os estaba comentando. Es decir, es necesario implantar mecanismos correctivos para poder solucionar los problemas de estas infraestructuras críticas. Y esto, la única forma de realizarlo es a través de regulación que imponga esto. Y con sanciones, evidentemente. Y luego, por otro lado, ya para terminar, un tercer paquete de acciones de defensa que yo llamaría del tipo operativo. Pero operativo con una nueva, digamos, que realmente tenga en cuenta el cambio de paradigma que se está dando en los problemas de seguridad y concretamente hablando de ciberseguridad. Mi compañera panelista evocaba el caso, por ejemplo, de Estonia. Estonia, que fue víctima de un ciberataque serio de Rusia. Estonia ha reaccionado. Estonia es un referente en cuanto a gobierno electrónico y en cuanto a adopción de nuevas tecnologías. ¿Cómo ha reaccionado? Pues ha reaccionado aplicando un concepto que tradicionalmente siempre ha estado en el entorno militar, que es decir, el concepto del personal en reserva. Yo, por ejemplo, vivo en Suiza. Suiza es un país muy pequeño, pero tiene un ejército en la reserva muy importante. Es decir, hay una cantidad ingente de personas que tienen armas automáticas en su casa y que están preparados para usarlas. Este concepto de la reserva es necesario hoy en día llevarlo al mundo de la ciberseguridad. Es decir, los gobiernos, los ejércitos, deberían contar con políticas de creación de personal en reserva experto en ciberseguridad que en un momento dado pudiese colaborar en el caso de un ataque a unas infraestructuras críticas. Esto que estoy diciendo en realidad sí que se está implantando en algunos países. Estonia es un ejemplo que sí que tiene unas políticas claras de creación de reservas, digamos, de personal experto en ciberseguridad. Unos les llaman ligas de expertos en seguridad, otros les llaman grupos de apoyo, en fin, hay distintos nombres. El concepto de reserva como tal no se utiliza mucho, pero es lo que hay detrás. Inglaterra el Reino Unido tiene su política también de reserva, Francia también tiene su política de reserva, aunque ellos lo han llevado más desde el punto de vista de concienciación a las empresas y desarrollo de políticas para, por ejemplo, comunicación de problemas de seguridad, etcétera. Y pienso que es muy importante que este tipo de buenas prácticas se apliquen de forma internacional y que además, digamos que a nivel de los gobiernos se haga un esfuerzo por adecuarse a estos cambios de paradigma de una forma realmente efectiva. Y bueno, estas eran las reflexiones que quería compartir con ustedes.
Muchas gracias, Pedro. Wendy Jackson-Dow. Welcome.
Buenos dias, everybody. I'm going to give you my remarks in English, and I bring you greetings from Pennsylvania and the United States. I'm going to talk today about an industry I love to talk about, which is relatively new in the world, and that is the drone industry. I will also refer to it as SUAS, which is Small Unmanned Aerial System, which essentially is the bird and the ground equipment. So I will use those phrases interchangeably. Before I get started on the institutional stability and security of this ecosystem, there are a couple notable facts I want to share with you. The drone industry, as I said, is about 5 years young, and according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, it's already a $127 billion global industry. And according to Consumer Electronics, thank you. According to Consumer Electronics, as of the end of 2018, there have already been 23 million units sold across the world. Compare that to the fixed wing industry, you know, the planes that some of us used to rode on to come over here. There are only about 23,000 to 34,000 of them in the world, and that's taken us 100 years to get to that point. So I thought it was pretty notable to make those distinctions. Now, who are the stakeholders in the drone community? The pilots, the service providers, the manufacturers, and the government and regulators that are building the infrastructure for this new industry. And I would also add to that that the general public as well is a stakeholder. We all recently heard of the unfortunate incident where an airport had to be shut down for 2 days over the Christmas holiday. And for those types of reasons, and since there have been over 23 million of these units sold, we have a lot of folks that are hobbyists. Unlike myself, who I'm a professional pilot and my business is to provide professional services to our clients, we abide by a strict set of rules and laws that provide safety for our clients. Unlike a lot of those hobbyists out there, they don't know the rules. They don't know that, and I'm going to use the United States standards that the Federal Aviation Administration regulates. You cannot fly over 400 feet above ground level. You cannot fly at night. You cannot fly over people. And you have to have your drone in your visual line of sight, meaning your naked eyeballs have to be able to see that drone. So when these thousands of hobbyists are buying these wonderful drones, they don't always follow those rules. They will fly over people, they will fly within 5 miles of an airport, and these types of unfortunate circumstances can occur. And for those reasons, it's tremendously important that we find ourselves building this infrastructure to provide that institutional stability. In the United States, the Federal Aviation Administration, which is a part of the Department of Transportation, has several things that they are putting in place now. It is mandatory that all drones are registered. If that drone is 0.55 pounds, 250 grams, and less than 55 pounds, 25 kilograms, it must be registered. And there is a central location in which to do that on the FAA's website called the Drone Zone, which I think is a cute little name. In addition to that, there's a centralized location where operators can get authorizations to do those types of things that are not sanctioned without authorization. For instance, flying over people. It's called OPS, operations over people. There are a couple organizations, I know CNN was one of the first in the United States to have that classification. It's very expensive and very time consuming. Daytime operations, which means flying at night. You can also get that authorization on this centralized website. Flying beyond visual line of sight. Now, where that might be applicable, my company does inspections for utilities. If you have a horizontal pipeline where you have to fly for miles, that's where that type of authorization would become very handy. Because again, you have to have that visual line of sight to fly that drone. Let's see, did I forget something? Operations over people, flying at night. That's it. In addition to that, there's something that was completely rolled out across the United States at the end of 2018 called LANCE. And LANCE is an acronym for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capabilities. Now, what's so wonderful about LANCE? Well, prior to LANCE, it could take up to 2 to 6 months to gain authorization to fly in certain air classifications. So LANCE now automates that process. And let's say you're a pilot and you're planning your mission. Well, you would put that data into the LANCE site, give them your flight plan, and they would match that against near real-time data from a FAA UAS data exchange bank. And if everything meets the approval, you can get that approval within a matter of 1 to 2 minutes, which is fantastic. For those of us that earn a living that way, it makes a huge difference to our ability to meet our clients' needs more efficiently. In the European Union, it is my understanding that in November of 2018, the EASA, European Authority in Aviation Safety, along with other stakeholders, had a high-level meeting to hammer out the Amsterdam Declaration. And that is based on 7 principles that I believe will start a really good base for building out that infrastructure to provide that stability like we're doing in the United States. In terms of security, drones are essentially a new way of efficiently gathering data. In every drone conference I attend, the headline is usually, well, data's the new oil. So everybody loves data, everybody's capturing data to make better business decisions, work more efficiently. So when drones are capturing that data, manipulating it, and delivering it in an actionable way, how do we secure that data? That's something that's critically important, particularly when you are potentially working with utilities, with critical infrastructure, railroads, hospitals. First responders are using drones now to do post-disaster recovery work, and they could be capturing some information that's very proprietary. So it's important that that data is secured and cannot be hacked. Another part of the security is when you're actually flying your drone. Drones operate off of GPS signals. When we launch our drones, we make sure we have at least 12 to 15 signals for connectivity to have a secure flight. So just like anything else, and my colleagues have talked about cybersecurity and all of that, we have a certified ethical hacker on our team to ensure that our drones cannot be hacked and overtaken by someone else remotely, and all that wonderful data that we are collecting for our client goes somewhere else. So that's another part of the infrastructure that should be put in place. There are some new regulations that just came out in the United States. First responders have found themselves finding drones and having to remove the battery so they can see the registration of that drone. And what that does, it attaches that drone to an owner, very similar to your car, your registration, your license, your insurance. That will tell an authority who owns that car. So the same thing applies for drones. So in order to mitigate a risk of some explosive chemical or agent being inside of that drone, as of February 25th, the Federal Aviation Administration now requires that all drones have that registration number on the outside of the bird versus inside to protect those first responders that may have to extract that battery. Some other new developments, excuse me, should have gotten some water. I'm coming up on my time, okay. So I'll just wrap up by saying I love what I do as a drone operator. We provide good services to our clients. We have a lot of good work to do before us as a global community, and it's these types of gatherings that provide those types of forums, and it would be my hope that best practices are looked at and enjoyed by all of us that are working in this industry. Thank you very kindly. Oh, and I did bring my drone with me, so I am going to test the app that I use in America to map my flight pattern. So if there's anybody in here that flies drones and you can show me where I can go, I am open. Thank you.
Okay, you win for cool factor. Yeah. Thank you very much, Wendy. Alexander, please, welcome.
So good morning, and I also try to speak in English. It's a German English this time. And I want to talk also about social and institutional stability, but from a more technical and a perspective like Pedro has done. And if Pedro hasn't frightened you enough, I think I will do the rest. So I want just talking about social institutional stability. It's very easy to achieve it. It's just achieved with trust. But trust nowadays becoming really a challenge, because the challenges we have already with the former mentioned panel discussions, for example, international crime. International crime offends trust, of course. And the next things which are also offending it are just things like our future technologies and our current technologies, which are also we need something which is preventing individual freedom in our world, but breaking down with current barriers, with borders, with familiar behaviors, and in our online reality. We're living in a real-time society now, exchanging everything, provisioned and currently ruled by private-owned companies, which giving the rule set for the behavioral and the discussions and the decisions. And this is what I call, in our cases, I call it a digital dictatorship. Because international companies like Facebook, Twitter, and so on, they define the rules how people interact with each other. And there is a need to think about many things about it, because they want just to get maximum profit out of each connected device and individual. And this is one of the things which are frightening me at the moment, really, because also the controlling mechanisms of our leaders from the political and from the law enforcement side, they are not able or willing to understand the principle of work. When we see how the hearing was from Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, in the US or in the EU, it was really a shame in my eyes from a technical perspective. They didn't understand the internet, they didn't understand Facebook, and then they want to discuss how to regulate something like this. How want you to regulate something you didn't understand? This very complex, and for lawmaking and for legal perspective also really a challenge. And the other challenges we also have is about, in other countries, is access to information. Sometimes we have too much information. On the other hand, there is not everywhere access to information because of a lack of technology or a lack of energy. Very simple things sometimes in the world. We also have to face up with this. And of course, this all will also be supervised by some countries with a missing trust into their own governments. And so the achievement of trust is becoming real a challenge nowadays. And also this uncertainty about having everything with having a motto with peace through the rule of law becoming nowadays very much difficult than in the former days, because having everything interconnected, as Pedro mentioned already, with some of the vulnerabilities of, I call it already cyborg devices, because our human abilities are extended by technical devices. And this is one of the endangerment of it, because everything with backdoors used by a government are the front doors for the hacker of tomorrow. This have to be everybody aware of it. So defining security, also from a governmental state security, we want to bring in backdoors in systems, we want to define backdoors. This will be for sure the front door for the hacker in the next generation. And as you're not frightened enough, and as it's not complex enough, looking forward with our current technologies, when we're talking about hyperledger, so blockchain, Bitcoin, and so on, which is told to be safe and proven, which it is not. And also with IoT devices, IoT connecting everything. This means in the very near future, we have trillions of devices everywhere, sensors everywhere. We're wearing them, we're having in our shoes, in nearly everywhere, and everything could be analyzed and online. And when we do not define the frame sets in our society, then we get in a real problem of giving trust to the citizens, to the people. Because if you don't know what is happening with your data, what you're doing now, if you're surveilled all the time, then you're starting to change your behavior. And a change of behavior in a free and democratic environment is really endangering also our social living together. And we have some countries which are more free, some countries are less free, and social behavior analysis and the definitions is something which should never be done, because this is already offending our democracy. And so this is a little bit not a very optimistic approach thinking about it, but of course there are way ahead. And so we have many possibilities. And one of the good aspects we have, for example, is our GDPR. GDPR is a regulation which defines ownership of data, because personal data is owned by the person. And this is just one very good approach, but it's just a European approach at the moment, but it's very successful. When I was last year in the Silicon Valley, also some companies are already stating, Cisco for example, the GDPR is the minimum baseline for the treatment of personal information. It's not the American rule of law, it's just the European rule of law, which getting international impacts already. And so we have very good things. And with this, even with this, all these things about disinformation, fake news, all this stuff about is also very dangerous, because we're also getting into a society of moralism. It's more moralism society, which also supports extremism, rumors, and this is also making our democracy vulnerable. So we have to defend also the facts. The facts to find is uncomfortable, because facts nowadays, we have to go Google, for example, information. Is it true or is it not really true? So how can we define if something is a fact or something is a rumor? There are mechanisms missing at the moment, also from our technical people, which should be discussed in our society. And this, all this together with this complexity will leave some people behind. And these people which are left behind, they're losing trust into maybe our social society, in our systems, in our governments. Oh, they're just observing me, so this all these urban legends follow us, and so on. And this makes it for us really challenging to reinvent trust into our democratic status and systems. And so it's just something which we have all together consider, and thinking about how we can improve our safety and our security, which is directly related to the trust and to the support of every citizen. We cannot leave anyone behind. And so this is my closing statement, and thank you very much.
Alexander, I have to point out that was exactly 8 minutes and 1 second. So that is, we appreciate the precision. It's pretty impressive. Well, very good. Vanessa, if you could join us. Yes, please.
Sorry, a bit of an obstacle. No, that's all right. At least there were flats. That's good. Thank you very much. Gracias. I can do it in either English or Spanish. For reasons that will soon become obvious, I've chosen to do it in Spanish. All right, you ready? Okay. Soy venezolana. What? Y ahí se fue. That was it. That's all I have to say. Ahora mismo nosotros enfrentamos las dinámicas que se encuentran en el cruce de la seguridad con la estabilidad, las instituciones con la sociedad. Las preguntas que surgen son muy reales. Nuestras instituciones están destruidas. No tenemos Estado de Derecho, sino simplemente tiranía. Mis compatriotas no tienen a dónde acudir en la búsqueda de seguridad, imparcialidad o lo más básico para sobrevivir, la comida. La policía no nos protege. Los tribunales no nos dan justicia. Nuestros gobernantes no solo no acatan la Constitución que redactaron, sino que tampoco permitirán que podamos superar el hambre o que por lo menos recibamos atención médica fuera de su rúbrica de control político y corrupción que los mantiene en el poder y extiende nuestro sufrimiento. Nuestras instituciones no nos funcionan. Nuestros entes de seguridad y defensa están a la orden de narcotraficantes, cleptócratas, cubanos, iraníes, rusos y chinos. El propio gobierno es un cartel criminal de la droga. En resumen, las funciones institucionales de mi país han sido subvertidas para trabajar en favor de un grupo delictivo organizado por el crimen transnacional y los intereses nefastos de varios gobiernos. En Venezuela, el Internet y los datos personales son herramientas para la represión brutal. Servicios de Internet no están ampliamente disponibles en el interior del país y además es una de las más lentas del mundo debido principalmente a la mala infraestructura. Sin embargo, tener el país aislado le sirve perfectamente al gobierno represivo. Tal como los cubanos hacen en su país, los sitios web se bloquean o eliminan de forma rutinaria y además se hackean los sistemas informáticos de los disidentes. Mientras tanto, Rusia ejecuta operaciones de influencia en línea en Venezuela, tanto para difundir historias falsas a favor del gobierno en plataformas de redes sociales como Twitter, de la cual dependemos muchísimo, y ataca la reputación de los críticos y también la usa como un campo de lanzamiento de programas similares para influenciar campañas políticas en otros lugares, incluyendo Europa y México. El gigante de las telecomunicaciones chino ZTE administra el nuevo carné de la patria que se requiere para obtener los beneficios del gobierno, incluidos los alimentos. Este carné sube la información a una base de datos que almacena detalles como cumpleaños, información familiar, empleo e ingresos, propiedades, historial médicos, beneficios estatales recibidos, presencia en redes sociales, membresía de partidos políticos y si la persona votó o no. Si la data no satisface, es muy sencillo negarle a ese ciudadano cualquier beneficio estatal, incluidos los que permiten tener garantía de seguir vivos. Esto le sirve no solo a la canalla madurista, sino también a los intereses extranjeros y malévolos, a los que no les interesa que Maduro se salga del poder. En mi trabajo en toda América Latina y en el Medio Oriente, he presenciado cómo el comercio ilícito engendra corrupción y cómo se usa la corrupción para manipular las instituciones del Estado, convirtiéndolas en plataformas a beneficio de organizaciones criminales, grupos terroristas e intereses ajenos. Estos grupos identifican el punto débil en las instituciones, un lugar, una persona, un vacío legal, y trabajan arduamente para debilitar aún más a esa institución y las afiliadas, para que funcionen según sus propósitos y en contra de los ciudadanos a quienes deberían proteger y representar. Necesitamos una mayor transparencia en la contratación pública y el gasto, y las finanzas de los políticos deben publicarse en línea. Vi de primera mano en Colombia cómo los grupos guerrilleros y los narcotraficantes trabajan juntos para corromper al gobierno colombiano, ganar dinero y continuar financiando lo que ha sido hasta ahora la guerra civil más larga del mundo. Con respecto al Cono Sur, hemos hablado mucho acerca de lo difícil que es abordar el comercio ilícito a través de la triple frontera, específicamente porque hay mucha corrupción, especialmente en las regiones fronterizas de los países que la conforman. En nuestro informe, Golden Hydra, Hidra Dorada, destacamos cómo las instituciones y la seguridad en las fronteras son deliberadamente débiles, diseñadas para permitir el comercio ilícito. Mientras tanto, el comercio legítimo se enfrenta a una serie de obstáculos, aranceles elevados, sistema de procesamiento de datos anticuado e infraestructura deficiente, en realidad causados por el mismo problema de corrupción. Esto da como resultados grandes distorsiones en la base tributaria que además alienta la desigualdad económica, le roba a los jóvenes la educación, a las familias una atención médica adecuada y deja vastas franjas de ciudadanos atrapados en un sistema que no les responde. Esto alimenta su sentido de la necesidad de derrocar al sistema político, causando una mayor inestabilidad. En Brasil y México se juega en la elección de forasteros, de forasteros políticos, pero en tantas otras regiones se juega violentamente. Por ejemplo, hemos entrevistado con excombatientes de Al-Shabaab y a menudo se menciona que la corrupción es una de las razones por unirse al grupo armado. Los combatientes que pasaron por el proceso de DDR, desarmamento, desmovilización y reintegración en Colombia, me contaron historias similares. Se unieron por dos razones: para tener un salario estable y para tener un sentido de dignidad y respeto en su comunidad, ya que se sentían olvidados y marginados. Entonces, el hecho de que las instituciones no atiendan a la población genera agresividad, criminalidad e incluso extremismo violento. En mi Venezuela estamos en un punto de inflexión. Nuestros escenarios de pesadilla incluyen guerra civil, insurgencias criminales o represalias por parte de disidentes de los servicios de seguridad. En mi país debemos reconstruir las instituciones a fin de lograr estabilidad. Afortunadamente, algunos de nosotros tenemos experiencia haciendo esto en otros países frágiles, incluidos en Asia Central o el Cuerno de África. Estoy promoviendo un plan de seguridad coherente que restauraría las instituciones y estabilizaría la sociedad. Queda claro que tenemos que despolitizar a las fuerzas de seguridad, como la policía, la Guardia Nacional y los militares, y luego eliminar entre ellos sus elementos criminales. Al fortalecer las instituciones de aplicación de la ley, el ejército y el poder judicial, garantizaremos la seguridad y nos alejaremos de un entorno permisivo de la actividad criminal por parte del Estado, por un lado, y la represión de los ciudadanos de diferentes opiniones políticas por el otro. Los servicios de seguridad deben profesionalizarse y pagar un salario digno. Para eso también necesitamos una moneda estable, para que la inflación se detenga. El análisis histórico muestra que la hiperinflación se detiene cuando se tiene una administración gubernamental que inspira confianza en su plan económico sólido, que no se baja en el señoraje, la diferencia del valor entre el nominal de la factura y el costo de su impresión para financiarse. Claramente, esto requeriría la salida limpia de Maduro. La otra opción sería considerar la dolarización para eliminar el riesgo de inversión extranjera. Junto con la despolitización de los servicios de seguridad, necesitamos garantizar una mayor seguridad en nuestras comunicaciones. Necesitamos establecer mayores medidas de vigilancia técnica, TSCM, por sus siglas en inglés, en nuestros sistemas de comunicaciones de comando y control. Una de las cosas que defendí en mi discurso a principios de noviembre en el Instituto de Política Mundial en Washington es que tenemos que también saber el tamaño del presupuesto nacional y averiguar qué porcentaje se requeriría para financiar los maestros, trabajadores de la salud y la policía. Eso de inmediato estabilizaría esos servicios, minimizando el riesgo de que se conviertan vulnerables a ser cooptados de nuevo por posibles fuerzas insurgentes o criminales vengativas. En conclusión, ya me voy a apresurar aquí, tengo muchas ideas. Como hemos aprendido luego de la guerra civil en Sierra Leone o el genocidio en Ruanda, entes religiosos o ONGs también se pueden convertir en centros de estabilización y educación para la atención básica de la salud y también ayuda psicosocial a familias en la reunificación de familias. Lo que puede parecer abstracto, pero en realidad es muy concreto, es que programas basados en fe y esperanza pueden ayudar en esto. En conclusión, en filosofía decimos que la democracia es un concepto espeso, que conlleva muchos otros valores. La estabilización social vendrá cuando los venezolanos tengamos fe en nuestras instituciones, cuando las observemos transparentes y justas, y también cuando volvamos a un sentido de comunidad y no de arremetida polarización, resentimiento o revanchas, y a reconectarnos con esa ética de imparcialidad y equidad, de juego limpio, exigiéndolo de quienes nos representan, pero también de nosotros mismos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Vanessa. Jorge Pedraza, por favor.
Hace unos pocos años, en un escenario como este, el idioma utilizado sería perfectamente distinto. A lo largo de esta mañana hemos insertado en nuestra jerga conceptos como blockchain, como el Internet de las cosas, como la ciberseguridad, como la nube, como el computing, significando que para hablar de temas de seguridad y de defensa, como para hablar de cualquier otro aspecto de la vida del día a día del ser humano, hoy tenemos un entorno completamente distinto. Las tecnologías de la información y las comunicaciones son hoy el aspecto más transversal en la vida del ser humano en cualquier lugar del planeta. No importa en qué país esté, si es un país en alto grado de desarrollo, o un país en subdesarrollo, o rico o pobre, o de norte o de sur, o sea una monarquía constitucional, o incluso el extremo una dictadura, las tecnologías de la información y las comunicaciones son el papel más transversal, la actividad más transversal del ser humano. Por eso afectan tanto la relación laboral. Entonces no podemos hablar de transporte, de educación, de hacienda, de finanzas, de organización del Estado, de defensa o de seguridad, sin pasar por las TIC. Otro tanto habrá que decir en el aspecto y en el ámbito social, porque la relación de familia, la relación de amigos, la relación de vecindad y aún la del amor pasan por las TIC. Esto significa que las tecnologías han cambiado la vida del ser humano para todos los efectos en el planeta. Habrá que preguntarse si para bien. Si evidentemente hoy las tecnologías el ser humano las está utilizando para su bienestar. Hay cosas que hace muy poco eran ficción y que hoy corresponden al mundo de la realidad. Producto del vertiginoso avance de las asombrosas invenciones del ser humano, que son tan rápidas que ninguna legislación o ninguna normatividad o reglamentación alcanza a emparejar estos conceptos y estas apariciones de la invención y de la inteligencia del ser humano. Por eso ahí en los temas de defensa y de seguridad hoy también han cambiado la correlación, porque probablemente en la proximidad el mayor poderío en defensa o en una confrontación lo tenga no quien más hombres tenga en el ejército o quien más aviones y tripulaciones, sino quien más acervo de ciberataque pueda ofrecer a la hora de ejercer a través de esta ruta el dominio. Yo creo que, y cuando me invitaron a este escenario, yo que estoy recién elegido como secretario general de la Comunidad Andina, estaba en la convicción que venía a poder hablarles de los 50 años que nosotros estamos cumpliendo y que nació un poco par y paso de la Comunidad Económica Europea, que luego le dio nacimiento a la Unión Europea, y que podría tocar temas que incluso también tienen que ver con seguridad en nuestra área. Por ejemplo, el de minería ilegal, por ejemplo, el de tránsito de personas, de migración, el de identidad de las personas. Pero todo esto hace parte hoy traído en la tecnología a lo que podríamos denominar genéricamente el cibercrimen. Y cómo además el mundo en muy poco tiempo se aprestará a nuevos conceptos en donde las confrontaciones no solamente se dan de Estado a Estado, sino entre civiles y gobiernos. Y en donde además los hombres dispuestos para la guerra serán muy pocos, ojalá así sea, en pérdidas de vidas. Y cuando ocurran estas confrontaciones, a lo mejor de paso al campo de la batalla, pasen por un regimiento hospitalario y de manera ambulatoria hagan un cambio de hígado o de riñón para seguir en su confrontación. Dice el profesor Cordeiro de la Universidad del Silicon Valley, de la Significado University, que el año 2045 podría llegar a ser el año más feliz para la humanidad, porque es el año en el cual, producto de la inteligencia, el hombre le habrá dado la muerte a la muerte. Por supuesto que ahí nacerán otros conceptos que serán producto del ejercicio, a lo mejor, de otro de estos bienales y que comprometerá temas éticos, de cultura o de religiosidad, si el hombre, desde el punto de vista cultural o religioso, ahí qué ocurre, si tiene alma, si el alma se fue o no se fue en la mitad del hígado que le reemplazaron o del corazón que le fusionaron. Es como pensar que en cuanto tengamos la teletransportación del ser humano, cuando una cabina permita que cerrada nos traslade de aquí a mi sede Lima en micras de segundos, si mi cuerpo llega allí, pero si mi alma no llega, o dónde se quedó, o dónde podremos encontrarla, pero eso obedece a una circunstancia distinta. El ser humano hoy debe prepararse para que, en punto a su defensa, a su seguridad, en un concepto amplio, no solamente la seguridad física, sino la seguridad jurídica, la seguridad ambiental, la seguridad biológica, la seguridad social. Todo este concepto esté abrigado porque las nuevas tecnologías y las apariciones de la innovación le permitan en muchos lugares de la Tierra, por supuesto, y me refiero ahí a los países en menor grado de desarrollo, utilizarla para salir de esa brecha, que no es simplemente una brecha digital, sino que en el fondo, en realidad, es una brecha social, y poder lograr el equilibrio entre las sociedades, entre los seres humanos en el planeta. Si no lo hacemos, conforme vamos, en muy poco tiempo vamos a tener un planeta más desequilibrado, en donde quienes han tenido el acceso mayor por recursos a la tecnología van a tener un mayor poder concentrado en todos los aspectos de la sociedad. Y entonces el desequilibrio será tan marcado que habrá resentimientos y habrá disputas entre estados y entre gobiernos y estados y entre sociedad civil y estados. Por eso, una de las conclusiones que quiero dejar aquí es que hoy el nuevo concepto de seguridad no compromete simplemente a una política de un estado o a una acción responsable de gobierno, sino que es un trípode que se sustenta, por un lado en los gobiernos, por el otro lado en el sector privado, que tiene que ser concurrente y básico y fundamental a la hora de hablar de la seguridad de una nación, y naturalmente, por otro lado, una ciudadanía con una cultura dispuesta a tener siempre una predisposición psicológica, mental y física a contribuir a la seguridad. Es decir, no podremos estarle reclamando elementos de seguridad simplemente al Estado o a un gobierno, sino que somos seres humanos partícipes y activos responsables también de nuestra propia seguridad. Creo que este tema es muy apasionante y desde luego invitaría a muchos más argumentos de fondo. Si, por ejemplo, esa seguridad y esa defensa compromete, producto de la invención del ser humano hoy, a los robots, y si ellos ya tienen ciudadanía, como se le han dado a Sofía en Arabia Saudita, que es ciudadana saudí, y entonces si tendremos pelotones en guerras de millones de robots haciendo la confrontación, y entonces los caídos de qué nacionalidad serán, cómo se imputarán los derechos sociales, las reivindicaciones familiares, las pensiones, en fin. O si naturalmente también ocurrirá que cada vez más seres humanos, como ocurre en Gran Bretaña, con un ciudadano que es el primer ciberlegal del mundo, porque se ha implantado, nace con una dificultad de visión, es monocromático, le han implantado en el cerebro una tecnología que le permite recuperar su visión policromática. Y en consecuencia, si somos completamente seres humanos o somos mitad humanos y mitad robots, y si eso permite que tengamos una extensión nueva del concepto de la personalidad que define el Código Civil, al menos el Código Civil, el que nosotros en América Latina hemos abrevado, que es el de incidencia francesa. Quería dejar esta reflexión y agradecer, por supuesto, la invitación a este importantísimo foro.
Well, that is actually an excellent way to bring this discussion to a conclusion. I have to say, it's one of the most condensed forms I've ever seen of the discussion of such truly important and really, I'd say, the basic elements of the debate that are ongoing across the globe today. So I appreciate all of the work that was done in encapsulating all this in very short and very concise, but very clear and deep discussions. So I'm going to meet my number one duty, which is to make sure that people are able to get out to lunch at the appropriate time. I know that if I do that, I win the game. Entonces, pero we are going to have, I'd like to have just spend a few minutes of discussion. We're scheduled to end at 2 p.m., so that leaves us a few minutes to talk about some of the themes that emerged here. I just wanted to note here that very clearly the stream running through all of this were the questions of values. And fundamentally, that's perfect for this conference. That it's appropriate, it's correct. Even when we talked about very specific subjects, they were anchored on this theme of values. And so I'm going to pose two questions here for discussion by anyone who'd like to take it. But before I do that, I did want to say that on the theme of Venezuela, that's the other theme I've seen touched in every event and discussion I've seen so far. And then again, that's because of the nature of this conference and because of the issue of values. It's absolutely appropriate that that be a central theme that we're talking about right now. But to get to these questions, I would say, number one, there has been a lot of discussion, a lot of review, Admiral, you referred to it, Ambassador, you referred to it, of tensions in the transatlantic relationship. Given the importance of that's been demonstrated by various speakers regarding the post-World War II history and the importance to really international security, what are your thoughts, and I would invite any of the panelists to join as well, on whether this is an episode that we've seen in the past, where tensions have existed in the past, or is there a qualitative difference? And is that qualitative difference a result of the very dynamic international environment and these trends that were discussed around the world, around the panel today about the fragmentation of power and the fragmentation of really the distribution of power in some cases and the concentration of power in others through technology, through developments, through economic developments that have put us and our relationship, the transatlantic relationship, in a different framework altogether. So that is a scattered way of asking, are we going to get better?
Well, I don't think it is I think it is a fundamental fragmentation which is taking place not only between the European and the United States, but as well among the European. We are really living in a moment in which there is a tremendous fragmentation in the sense of what we are in Europe and the relation we must have with the United States. And this is, so there is, I think there is fault on both sides of this relationship. And so to overcome that, we have to make an effort really to rebuild a value-based bond, because that is the point. Because at this moment, this values-based alliance, it is under pressure in the US and in Europe. In Europe, fragmentation is quite evident, is strongly evident. And so the effort is to really to insist that we have to reinforce this bond through fundamentally reinforcing the value which are the core of the alliance, fundamentally, beside all the military stuff, but beside the core of the alliance is a political relationship between nations, between, in this case, Europe and the US, that we believe in in an open liberal democracy, and we want to defend and protect, and possibly also expand the essence of multilateralism. That is at the core, and this point is challenged in the US, is challenged in Europe.
I see it a little bit differently. I think that our transatlantic relationship is very solidly rooted in values and in terms of a paradigm that has brought us closely together for decades. We're interwoven because of our culture, because of our history, because of the partnership, friendship, and even the formal alliance relationships. At the same time, we have had differences, and I can think of some very intense differences in the past that at the time, from the standpoint of the transatlantic relationship, seemed to be very intense. One time when, during the period of the Reagan administration, and when Helmut Kohl was the Chancellor of Germany, Germany was very much against the issue of this placement of, I think it was, the term was used, theater nuclear forces. The country was vehemently opposed. Kohl made a decision to do it, but it was a very, very intense time where there was a lot of controversy. So, in sum, my view is I think we are grounded in values, we are grounded and bound culturally, historically, and we have very broad common goals, objectives in terms of our foreign policies. And I think that despite the ups and downs, that there's a kind of resilience that undergirds the relationship.
I wonder if I could expand on that a little bit with regard to the other main theme that was discussed here, which was a question of trust. Trust between companies that are involved in the cyber area and citizens, between citizens and governments, and between countries. So I wonder if any of our other speakers could address this question, and perhaps there are microphones there. If there are areas that we can talk about how representatives from industry, from among consumers, among governments, among specialists, what they can do to engender, drive a productive debate over the proper role of security, privacy, and technology in our lives in a structured way.
Well, the matter about trust is really interesting because we are facing nowadays like another paradigm shift, which is we don't want trusted third parties anymore. And this is the awakening of the blockchain technology is because of this concept. So there's a trend, and I think this is a reflection of the neoliberalism. So where we we apply this concept of liberal economy to the rest of the activities of the human being, where people trying to avoid the role of an state or the role of an entity that controls things and want to do the things on their own. And this has been propiciating the raising of technologies like blockchain, where we basically avoid the role of a trusted third party. If we think on this, I think this is very dangerous, because with the loss of this concept of the trusted third party, we are losing also the concept of who can apply some common ground, some regulations, some audit criteria, some metrics to know if the participants in a transaction can be trusted or not. And this is really a big challenge, and from my particular company, and I'm sure that my colleague will think similarly, we live out of our trust. So we are trusted third parties, we deliver, in our case, for example, identity services, and for us it's really a challenge confronting this new approach of losing the concept of a trusted third party, because everyone wants to avoid it. So it's a real challenge, actually.
I just want to add some things. I have a little bit different opinion on some things. It's just minor. For example, the Internet Security Alliance with Larry Clinton stated, there is no one left to trust in cyberspace. This is the beginning of our decades of our generation. Everything which we thought we can trust in the cyber area has gone, because you cannot prove that everyone who believes something, doing something, is it really the truth, or you can just hope that it's the truth. And this makes it a little bit dangerous. You see it in the cyber attacks. You cannot do an attribution. You cannot say who is the real cyber attacker. This is nearly impossible today. And this makes it so complicated to blame anyone or to punish anyone or to go after anyone. And this is one of the challenges. And to order or to make a structure on this discussion, I think education is the first aspect of it. We need more educated also deciders or also consultants to the deciders, because everybody is talking, for example, in the area of cybersecurity. When I was starting in cybersecurity 20 years before, nobody was listening to it. It was just a nerd.
It occurred to me, one thing that I found very interesting, Wendy, in your discussion was how that management of a brand new technology with many positive and many threatening aspects is being dealt with so organically through, between industry and government, but also that there's this enormous independent group, which is the ordinary hobbyists who are part of the, so I don't know if that's an element too, but I found it very, very illuminating as well.
Well, you're absolutely right. There's a large percentage of the drone ecosystem that do not abide by those laws, so it is critically important that there is that infrastructure to put in place, because you can't trust them to make good decisions. And like I've alluded to, the episode in the airport was a prime example of why it's so important.
Vanessa, I think you're going to have the last word.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, just to say, I'm not a cyber security expert. I work with people who are, and I know that attribution is very difficult. All I can say is, the situation of governments versus citizens and the enforcement of rights in cyberspace is very, very much at the forefront of what's happening in Venezuela. And I think we'll see a lot more of it. You see it in Nicaragua, you see it in other places, where it's the only way you can use to get the word out, to get the message out. But then it's also the way that we're repressed. So it's a constant guerrilla warfare of, VPNs and credible sources and credible networks, and who is the node, like, can you pass the message on to someone who has 1 million followers, but you know that they know that there's some sort of a relationship. So those kinds of mechanisms have become really at the forefront of the battle for democratic rights. and getting attention put on institutions that we want to see restored to democracy. But at the same time, you know, you have trolls and you have fake accounts and spreading false information. And even those of us who think we're savvy about that stuff have been guilty of spreading false information because you go, oh wow, that, you know, it's so fast. So it's really the Wild West out there, whether you're doing it from the cybersecurity hacking standpoint or the messaging and democratic rights standpoint. It's a complex environment.
Yo creo que enfatizar en que la sociedad civil tiene una enorme responsabilidad a la hora de hablar de su entorno, de su seguridad. Yo lo dije en mi exposición, el concepto de seguridad hoy no puede recaer de manera exclusiva y excluyente en los gobiernos o en los estados. Creo que con la evolución, con la inserción de las tecnologías, hoy la mayor parte de inseguridad para la ciudadanía la genera el mismo ciudadano, de tal manera que somos corresponsables. Por eso ese trípode es fundamental hoy a la hora de hablar de una seguridad integral de gobiernos, ciudadanos, ciudadanía y sector privado. Y naturalmente vendrán nuevos eventos y nuevas circunstancias que también generarán evolución en el derecho, en la organización de los estados. Creo que en el camino al paso, igual que en otros aspectos de mera tecnología o de aspectos de servicios públicos o educativos o de salud, en temas de seguridad, seguramente con una mayor cultura, iremos camino a la desnormativización, o es decir, a la autorregulación, que no es otra cosa que nosotros mismos, por nuestros comportamientos, con nuestra ética superior, basado en unos valores, tengamos unos elementos de seguridad con menos normas, con menos reglas, con menos limitantes, con menos incluso normas de carácter local o constitucional, sino que la vida de los seres humanos transcurra de una mejor manera. En síntesis, todo debe estar enfocado, y particularmente en el tema de la tecnología, siempre al mejoramiento de la calidad de vida del ser humano. Hoy los estados modernos no ofrecen ya electricidad, ni políticas de vivienda, ni políticas educativas, sino que estamos camino a un nuevo concepto, a un nuevo umbral, que es el de ofrecerle la felicidad a la gente. Y creo que la seguridad hace parte de la felicidad de la gente.
Solo quisiera agradecer a todos los ponentes por una conversación tan rica como para mí estamos tocando los temas centrales del debate global de este momento y tratando de hacerlo dentro de 1 hora y 45 minutos. So that's pretty good. Quería también agradecer la flexibilidad de las intérpretes. Thank you very much for all of your work. It was really extraordinary. And thank you, all of you, todos los que participaron aquí para oír esta conversación. Muy agradecidos por su participación aquí hoy. Muchas gracias.
There ain't nothing like sunshine and air to make you feel like